Nobody in the View's production team expected that morning to spiral into complete chaos. It was supposed to be just another roundtable discussion, another predictable debate, another opportunity to reinforce the show's narrative. Nothing new, nothing out of control. But what happened next left the entire studio in shock. In the dim glow of the makeup room, Whoopi Goldberg barely glanced at the producer's notes as she sipped her coffee. She didn't need them. Another conservative guest. Another easy takedown. She had done this countless times before. This was her show, her turf. For years, Whoopi had been the master of the debate, the one who dictated the rules. Whenever a conservative guest appeared, the pattern was the same. Cut them off before they gained momentum, mocked them just enough to keep the audience laughing, drown them in applause. It always worked. She had humiliated senators, commentators, even governors. And she thought she could do the same to Karoline Leavitt, a rising conservative star, young, outspoken, and unapologetic. A few hours earlier, back in the green room, Karoline had been warned. They're going to set you up. Be ready. She smirked at her phone screen, like she didn't already know. She had seen it dozens of times. Guests thrown into a verbal ambush, their arguments dismissed before they even had a chance to defend themselves. But Karoline wasn't here to play defense. She was here to fight back. She adjusted the mic clip to her blazer, took one last sip of water, and exhaled slowly. This wasn't going to be Whoopi's show today. Not this time. The studio lights dimmed. The intro music played. The cameras started rolling. Whoopi took her seat, confident, composed. The studio felt calm, composed, almost routine. The audience chuckled at light banter between the hosts. The usual energy was there, relaxed, familiar, predictable. But the moment Karoline Leavitt's name was introduced, the air shifted, a subtle change. Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward slightly, her posture sharpening. She was ready to strike. She wasted no time. Karoline, let's be honest. Conservative media has been spreading a lot of misinformation. How do you defend that? A wave of applause rippled through the audience, as if Whoopi had just delivered a knockout punch in the first round. But Karoline didn't react the way they expected. She didn't falter, didn't scramble for words. She simply tilted her head slightly and let the silence hang for half a second longer than comfortable. Then her response came, calm, deliberate, razor-sharp. I think the bigger question is, who gets to decide what's misinformation? The studio shifted again, not visibly, not in a way the cameras would pick up instantly, but in the small things. A few members of the audience stopped clapping mid-motion. A couple of co-hosts exchanged quick glances, as if they had just realized this debate wasn't going to unfold the way they thought. Whoopi's opening attack had been carefully calculated. A broad accusation, a familiar setup, one designed to force Karoline into a defensive position, to make her scramble, to put her on her heels before she even had a chance to speak. But that didn't happen. Karoline didn't flinch. She took a breath, placed her hands lightly on the table, and delivered her first counterstrike, calm, deliberate, and razor-sharp. That's interesting. You talk about misinformation, but your show has spread plenty of it. A ripple went through the studio. A few audience members shifted in their seats. Some exchanged glances. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Whoopi's expression hardened. Oh, come on. She let out a forced chuckle, trying to wave off the moment. We fact-check everything on this show. We don't spread misinformation. Karoline tilted her head slightly, a small, subtle movement, but the effect was undeniable. A knowing look, a hint of amusement. Really, her voice stayed light. You don't. The question hung in the air just a second too long. Whoopi's fingers tensed on the table. Karoline let the silence stretch before leaning in slightly, lowering her voice just enough to make the moment feel even sharper. Well, I can think of a few examples where that's not exactly true. The shift was almost imperceptible, but it was there. The audience murmured. Some of the co-hosts exchanged glances. And just like that, the energy in the room changed. For the first time in years, Whoopi Goldberg was no longer in control of the conversation. For years, she had commanded the stage, steering debates, cutting off opponents, ensuring the conversation never strayed beyond her control. But now she was losing her grip. And she did not like it. The tension in the studio thickened. The energy had shifted. Karoline wasn't playing defense anymore. She was taking control. Whoopi's fingers tensed against the table. She leaned in, voice sharpening, trying to regain dominance. "Oh, please, Karoline." She let out a sharp, dismissive chuckle. Let's not pretend conservative media hasn't spent years flooding this country with lies, paranoia, and outright propaganda. The damage your side has done, it's immeasurable. A smattering of applause rippled through the audience. But Karoline, unmoved, she waited, calm, composed, letting Whoopi speak herself into a corner. And that only made Whoopi angrier. Her voice grew sharper, more pointed. She leaned forward, cutting the space between them. And then she took a step further. "Let's be real, Karoline. People like you are the reason this country is more divided than ever. You push this fake persecution narrative, playing the victim while your side silences anyone who disagrees." The room stiffened. A few gasps from the audience. Even some of the co-hosts shuffled uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't just a political jab anymore. It was personal. But Karoline didn't move. She didn't flinch. She simply placed her hands on the table, tilted her head slightly, and struck. "Are you finished?" The words landed like a slap across the table. The audience froze. Whoopi blinked, her mouth opening slightly as if reaching for something, anything, to say. But for the first time, she had nothing. And Karoline? She was just getting started. Karoline watched as Whoopi's jaw tightened. Then she said it. "You try to shut them up completely." The silence in the studio was deafening. Whoopi shifted in her seat, crossing her arms in a subconscious defensive posture. She scoffed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, give me a break." She rolled her eyes again, but this time she didn't sound so sure. "No one's trying to shut you up, Karoline." Karoline leaned forward slightly, her voice sharp but steady. "Really?" She held the word just a moment too long before delivering the final blow with surgical precision. "So tell me, Whoopi, when was the last time a conservative panelist sat at this table and actually finished a sentence without being interrupted or ridiculed?" Whoopi froze. For the first time, she had nothing to say. The audience sat in stunned silence. The other panelists stiffened. Even the cameras lingered on Whoopi's face, capturing every second of her speechlessness. And then Karoline drove it home. "Maybe the reason people don't take this show seriously anymore," she let the words hang before delivering the final strike, "isn't because of misinformation. It's because you don't allow real discussions. You just perform outrage and call it journalism." Boom. The audience erupted. Not in full applause, not in full outrage, just chaos. Gasps. Scattered claps. Murmurs of shock. The panelists exchanged nervous glances, realizing the segment had gone completely off the rails. And Whoopi Goldberg, she had just lost control of her own show. The moment Whoopi stormed off The View, the internet detonated. Not minutes later, seconds. Before the show had even cut to commercial, the raw, unfiltered footage was already spreading like wildfire across Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. Within 5 minutes, it was the #1 trending clip in the country. By the time The View's official page even acknowledged the disaster, the moment had already racked up millions of views. Completely out of their control. This wasn't just a viral clip. This was an event. Hashtags like hashtag Whoopi walks off, hashtag Karoline exposes The View, hashtag The View meltdown, and hashtag Whoopi can't debate exploded across Twitter. The reaction was immediate and ruthless. Karoline wasn't just trending. She had become the face of a political shift. Comment sections across platforms tore into Whoopi. She just proved Karoline's point. She ran the second she lost control. This wasn't just a debate. This was The View getting exposed in real time. I've never watched The View before, but I can't stop replaying it. Some of the most brutal reactions came from The View's own audience. I've watched this show for years. This was humiliating. If Whoopi had a real argument, she wouldn't have left. Period. This was supposed to be an easy takedown for Whoopi. Instead, she fell apart. The narrative had collapsed. For years, The View had pushed the idea that conservatives avoided real discussions, played the victim, and ran from tough conversations. But now, millions had just seen the exact opposite. When it came down to a real debate, it wasn't Karoline who walked away. It wasn't Karoline who refused to engage. It was Whoopi. And the internet wasn't about to let her forget it. Corporate media scrambled to contain the disaster. Fox News, The Daily Wire, and Newsmax ran the footage on a loop, calling it The View's biggest meltdown ever. CNN and MSNBC tried to downplay the situation, calling it just a heated moment. But the internet wasn't buying it. The View's social media team went silent. They had no spin, no way to reframe what had just happened. Then, former hosts of The View started speaking up. One ex-host tweeted, "Finally, someone stood up to Whoopi and didn't back down. That was worth watching." Another commentator posted, "This wasn't supposed to happen. They brought Karoline on to embarrass her. Instead, Whoopi lost control of her own show." This wasn't just a clip anymore. This was a political and cultural moment. People who had never engaged in political discourse were suddenly watching, analyzing, and reacting. Even celebrities and influencers chimed in. If Whoopi was so right, why did she leave? That's not what winning looks like. No amount of PR can undo what we all just saw. The View lost all credibility today. And then, one of the biggest moments of the fallout, Karoline was invited onto multiple networks that evening. Her response? "I went on to The View for a discussion. Whoopi left because she didn't want to have one." Mic drop. The internet erupted again. The View scrambled. By the following morning, their damage control machine was in full swing. They issued a formal statement, hoping to regain control of the narrative. "Our program has always welcomed diverse perspectives. However, yesterday's discussion became more heated than anticipated." But no one was buying it. The raw footage was everywhere. It couldn't be spun, rewritten, or reframed. Millions had already seen what happened with their own eyes. And The View's attempts to soften the disaster, they only made it worse. Meanwhile, conservative media didn't let up. Fox News aired the clip on repeat with the headline, "Whoopi Goldberg storms off The View after Karoline Leavitt calls out hypocrisy. Must-see TV." The Daily Wire followed up with, "Watch. Whoopi can't handle Karoline's facts. Throws tantrum on live TV." Newsmax even brought in a body language expert to analyze Whoopi's meltdown. This wasn't just frustration, the expert explained. This was someone realizing in real time that she was losing and needing an escape. For the next 24 hours, the clip was replayed everywhere, dissected frame by frame with political analysts breaking down every shift in Whoopi's expression. And just as expected, mainstream media tried to fight back. CNN dismissed it as a contentious moment taken out of context. MSNBC defended Whoopi, claiming she was taking a stand against misinformation. The Washington Post ran an op-ed attacking Karoline, insisting her comments were designed to provoke emotion, not engage in real discussion. But none of it worked, because the footage didn't lie. Every time the media tried to spin it, people just went back to the original clip and saw the truth. And then the memes took over. When you lose a debate and gotta go. Whoopi, after realizing Karoline actually has receipts. When you invite a conservative on your show thinking it'll be an easy win. Late night, hosts piled on. Jimmy Fallon played the clip joking, "I haven't seen someone walk off a set that fast since my ex found my Tinder profile still active." TikTok comedians reenacted Whoopi's dramatic mic pull and storm off, racking up millions of views. But the biggest moment? It didn't come from Whoopi or The View's producers. It came from Karoline herself. She didn't rant. She didn't fight back. She didn't need to. She simply retweeted the viral clip with one line, "I thought this was a debate." And just like that, the internet detonated again.